Get back to the virus, please. Florida, California, Texas. They now account for about 1/5 of the whole world's new virus cases. In Texas Tuesday, almost 11,000 new cases, and there are now a total of over 10,000 hospitalizations in that state. Texas Congressman Dan Crenshaw joins us now. In view of these numbers, Congressman, do you see a second lockdown coming in Texas like what we've seen in California?
Well, I hope not. Okay, so let's look at the cases. You have to understand, too, that those three states probably account for by far the most testing in the world. Case numbers are an indicator, and an indicator we should pay attention to, but we have to pay attention to all the data, not just the scariest data. So we should also be looking at hospitalizations. In fact, we should be focusing on hospitalizations and death rates. As far as hospitalizations go in Houston, one of the hardest hit places in Texas, our growth rate in hospitalizations has almost flattened. Now, that's a few days of good trends. It could change, and we have to be cautious and continue to wear our masks, socially distance, and not gather in large groups. But the trend is going in the right direction. Our death rate in Texas continues to be one of the best in the world, actually. It's 10 times higher in New York. And as a fatality rate, again, we are one of the best in the world. Our hospitals still have vast amounts of capacity. They can surge upwards of thousands of beds. Now, this is an important point because a lot of Democrat politicians and media pundits have deliberately misled the public on this, made people believe that their hospitals are overrun when they are not. And this is really problematic and actually deadly because people are too afraid to go to the hospital to get care for whatever kind of illness they might have. And so it's really important for people to know that if they need care, they need to go to the hospital.
Got it. Now, there's a lot of talk about how Texas just could possibly go Democrat in the election in November. But I noticed that former Trump physician Ronnie Jackson, he won his GOP primary in your state. That looked to me like a referendum on President Trump. Your reaction, please.
I didn't follow the race closely enough to really know whether it's a referendum on President Trump. The president gets involved in a lot of primaries, and sometimes they go his way, sometimes they don't. I happen to like Ronnie a lot. I think he'll be great.
Okay, is there any ill feeling against the governor of Texas, Governor Abbott, because some people might say he opened up too early?
Great question. Listen, simple deductive reasoning, I think, debunks this myth that reopening is what causes spikes. Okay, we reopened way back in early May. LA County, which is having some of the biggest spikes in the country, never really reopened. Okay, so what happened? Late May, we had massive protests, tons of people in the streets, and also holidays, big gatherings that people did. There's a layering effect that occurred. And of course, there was going to be spikes. Now, luckily, we've gotten a lot better at treating this disease. Our hospitals have been preparing for it for months. So we're in a much different place than, say, back in March, and where New York City was getting completely overwhelmed, didn't quite know how to treat the disease. And let's not forget, because of their policies, putting senior citizens back in nursing homes, they lost 32,000 people. And so reopening, giving people their freedom to engage in risk and confront it the way they see fit is not the culprit here. Okay, we have to have a balance. And we also have to be honest about our conversations. When you're shutting down the economy, it has huge costs, both health costs in terms of extra suicides, domestic violence, the health consequences of not being able to go to the hospital, get your elective surgeries. The schools shutting down have had massive costs. Those things seem to be swept under the table when we have this conversation. And we need to have smarter, more contextualized conversations about the costs of lockdowns.
Yes, and I'm glad you're holding one of those conversations with us this morning. Congressman Crenshaw, thanks for joining us. We'll see you again real soon. Thank you, sir.
Hi.
Now,